WADR. Promoting dialogue.
It's May Day in Dakar, 1 o'clock in Cotonou. Good afternoon, and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and worldwide on WADR.org. Welcome to Newslink, and here are the top stories. Senegalese Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko meets members of Parliament today to answer questions regarding the current state of affairs. Workers in Ghana are to enjoy a 10% increment in salaries and minimum wage.
We all knew the economy was in crisis, but some of the things I'm discovering myself has been a criminal handling of our economy. Ghana is a crime scene, actually. And so I'll just appeal to you that let's tamper our demands for this year.
Civil society in Liberia suggests the country redirects blocked salaries of some government officials into fighting anti-corruption. And reactions trail the proposed 5-year transition in Niger.
Nigerians have experienced discrimination, injustice, and looting for over 50 years. So, even if we give them 20 years, they will not be able to solve everything.
Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Here is Augustine Coley with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast, and welcome to our listeners in the Gambia, Ghana, Liberia, and Sierra Leone. We begin in Senegal as Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko is facing members of Parliament this afternoon. Ousmane Sonko will respond to questions from the parliamentarians on current affairs in the country. This platform serves as an avenue for the Senegalese head of government to address the pressing issues at the moment. There is more in this report filed by Mustafa Jakiti and voiced by Christopher Aticho.
At 4 p.m. Universal Time, the Prime Minister of Senegal will appear before the deputies. Ousmane Sonko will answer 10 questions, 8 from the parliamentary majority and 2 from the opposition. These questions must be succinctly formulated. Current affairs questions should be of general interest and relate to the event that occurred at least 1 month prior to their submission. Among the current affairs questions are those from Gay Maria Sagna. The majority deputy questions, among other things, include the increase in hospitalization expenses in 2024, the non-payment of some social service agents, and the lack of schools or water in certain localities. An independent deputy had introduced a proposal on Tuesday to repeal the amnesty law concerning political violence during the period of 2021 to 2024. Questions related to the union demands are also on the table. However, the Prime Minister must avoid pitfalls, while President Bassirou Diomaye Faye calls for consultations to calm the social climate. Mamadou Sey Albert is a political analyst.
The PMMIS should refrain from announcing decisions that could hinder social dialogue. It would be a mistake to introduce measures that might antagonize the unions. The unions are already on edge, and the central labor organizations are prepared to call for a strike, risking the suppression of future social dialogues. Perhaps the Prime Minister should focus on outlining broad policy directions regarding exemptions, taxation, and wages, while creating space for constructive dialogue.
It should be noted that some opposition members have criticized the limited numbers of questions allocated to them.
Mustafa Jakiti's report, voiced by Christopher Aticho. In the Gambia, the civil society organization Edward Francis Small Center for Rights and Justice has raised concerns over the takeover of the Banjul port by the Turkish company Al Barak. The CSO described the concessions as illegal, adding that it constitutes a huge social and economic loss to the people of the Gambia. The Human Rights and Justice Advocacy Group has therefore called on President Barrow and the National Assembly to urgently halt the concession agreement. Sankule Janko reports.
The takeover of the Banjul ports came to effect on 14 February 2025 under a concession agreement between the Gambia Ports Authority and the Turkish company Al Barak. EFS CFRJ, in an official statement issued on Thursday, did not only consider it illegal, but a huge social and also economic loss to the Gambian people. Mahdi Jabate is a founding member of the organization.
It is to express our position that we object to this concession, that is to hand over the Banjul port to a foreign entity from Turkey. It is illegal in the sense that this arrangement needed to have National Assembly review and approval. Furthermore, they claim it's a public-private partnership arrangement. And in the Gambia, there is no law on that arrangement. And so there is no legal basis, therefore, this decision was based upon.
Key among the many concerns raised by EFSCRJ is the share basis as per the concession agreement, which states that the Turkish company would have 80% of the shares for the next 30 years.
To have this foreign company come and take 80% and the Gambia takes 20%, what is the basis for it? Because this is our port, this is in the Gambia. If we have to give it to some people to run it, we should pay them. But it is like they own our port and they are paying us. That also is problematic, very, very problematic.
Considering the issues of staffing, shares and operations, EFSCRJ therefore demands transparency as to which authorities spearheaded the negotiations for this concession as it rejects the agreement. It therefore called on the chair and members of the Public Enterprise Committee PEC of the National Assembly to intervene urgently to reverse this concession and maintain the Banjul port under the full ownership, control and management of the Gambia Ports Authority. Above all, the CSO called on President Barrow to intervene urgently to halt this concession agreement between GPA and Albera Company, saying it doesn't serve national interests.
That's WADR's Banjul correspondent Sankle Janko reporting there. Looking inward, exploring local resource mobilization and alternative funding mechanisms like social enterprise models are some of the recommendations posed to the regional governments by civil society actors. At the webinar organized by the West Africa Civil Society Institute's WATSI on Thursday, various speakers emphasized the need for African civil society to innovate, adapt quickly, and work towards greater self-reliance in response to the funding cuts. Echiatisu has more details in this report.
These recommendations are coming on the heels of the recent suspension of development aid by the United States, which has had profound implications for civil society across the region, affecting critical sectors such as health, education, governance and peace, and security. On the positive end, stakeholders opine that the freeze on funding to Africa serves as a wake-up call for the region to strengthen its capacity to mobilize and manage resources locally and effectively. One of the speakers, Mahdi Jabate, Executive Director of the Edward Francis Small Center for Rights and Justice, urged West African nations in particular to prioritize efficiency, reduce wasteful spending, and redirect resources toward critical sectors such as health, agriculture, and education.
I think it is high time African activists like us, African intellectuals, our politicians, our technocrats, our businesses, and Africans in general to cut the crap and we confront this issue, all right? Because aid is political. Look at right now what the U.S. is doing. They said they are going to cut aid to South Africa because of the South African policy on land. You have a military coup, they cut off aid. You are a government that wants to challenge something, they cut off aid. So aid has been a political tool to control and dominate Africa.
Meanwhile, civil society organizations and funded projects in Liberia are already feeling the pinch, according to Eddie Jawolo, Executive Director, Namot Partners for Democratic Development, who called for the redesigning budgets to cushion the impact of funding cuts.
A majority of the work we do in Liberia is supported by U.S. government assistance. Not only USAID, but the National Endowment for Democracy also just stopped supporting civil society in Liberia. So, like we have a car with all gasoline. The car is not damaged. All we need to say, how do we get gas back into our car and keep moving? You can freeze your system, but you cannot freeze our dream.
Countries which will be most affected are those with a high burden of HIV, TB, and malaria, and those with large populations of refugee and internally displaced people.
Echiatisu reporting there.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Now in Guinea-Bissau, a delegation from ECOWAS and the United Nations Office for West Africa and the Sahel is expected in the country this Sunday, February 23. This mission comes in a tense contest in the country, with President Umaru Sissoco Embalo's mandate ending on February 27 this year. The delegation will meet with the main political actors in the country. More details with Imo Edit.
The delegation will be led by Bagudu Hesse, former Minister of State for Foreign Affairs of Nigeria. He will be accompanied by Khalidou Traoré, Ambassador of Côte d'Ivoire to Nigeria, Babatunde Ajisomo, Special Assistant to the Head of Mission, Cherno Mamadou Diallo, former Senior Political Advisor to the UN, and Pabiram Sene, Senegalese Director of Elections. This visit comes as uncertainty grows in the country, with President Umaru Sissoco Embalo's intention to remain in power until the inauguration of his successor after the election scheduled for October and November. The opposition, on the other hand, demands his departure on February 27, the anniversary of his inauguration 5 years ago. This high-level mission will conduct consultations with the government and political actors on the political and security situation in the country. This initiative, launched by the president of the ECOWAS Commission, Omar Ali Touré, aims to support the effort of political actors and stakeholders towards a political consensus on the electoral calendar. Recall the Supreme Court had informed President Embalo on September 4, 2024, that his mandate will end on the 27th. The opposition, led by former Prime Minister Domingos Simões Pereira, demands the establishment of an interim president. The date for the future presidential election will be set at the end of March.
Imo Edit with that report. Meanwhile, in Nigeria, the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS Commission, in collaboration with the International Organization for Migration, the International Labour Organization, and the International Center for Migration Policy Development, has officially launched the second phase of the Support to Free Movement of Persons in Migration in West Africa project. The launch took place at the ECOWAS Commission Main Hall in Abuja, marking a significant milestone in the region's efforts to enhance integration and migration governance. Usma Umar reports.
FMM2 builds on the successes of its first phase, launched in 2013 to enhance migration governance, facilitate mobility, and promote sustainable development across West Africa. With over 26 million euros in co-funding from the EU and ECOWAS, the initial phase supported migration data management, border control, labor migration, and counter-trafficking while engaging non-state actors and local authorities. At the launch, key speakers, including ECOWAS Vice President Demtian Chinchibija and EU Representative Mr. Massimo De Luca, emphasized the project's role in tackling migration challenges and improving livelihoods through effective policy and cooperation.
FMM2 will be instrumental in creating a region that is not only economically integrated, but also socially resilient, peaceful, and prosperous. The launch of this phase is also a call to action, a reaffirmation of our shared responsibility to address the migration challenges of the future with unity and determination.
And I know this is a phase 2, so we should know the task very well by now. Our implementing partners should be very acquainted with the terrain, and certainly they are. Our counterparts, our friends in ECOWAS, they certainly understand the size of what we are starting with this program. But let me say that the general context here in the region, in Europe and worldwide makes this task all the more relevant, all the more important for all of us.
For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
You are listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Senegalese Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko meets members of parliament today to answer questions regarding the current state of affairs. Workers in Ghana are to enjoy 10% increment in salaries and minimum wage. Civil society in Liberia suggests the country redirects blocked salaries of some government officials into fighting corruption. Still ahead, reactions trailed the proposed 5-year transition in Niger. We also have a guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Many thanks for sticking with us. That's a reminder we are streaming live on YouTube at WADR News and on Facebook, WADR English Service. Public sector workers in Ghana will see a 10% increment in their salaries for the 2025 fiscal year. This comes after the government approved the adjustment on the single-span salary structure. At the same time, the National Tripartite Committee has also agreed to a 10% increase in the national daily minimum wage. WADR's Nadeditite reports.
Before this agreement, Finance Minister Dr. Kasiela Tuforsen had initially proposed an 8% increase. However, organized labor, which first demanded a 60% rise, later reduced its request to 35% before negotiations reached a stalemate. It took the intervention of President John Dramani Mahama to break the deadlock. He convinced the labor unions to accept a 10% increase and assured them of better economic prospects ahead.
We all knew the economy was in crisis. But some of the things I'm discovering myself has been a criminal handling of our economy. Ghana is a crime scene, actually, because how a government can have been so reckless, I cannot understand. But we're faced with a reality. And so I'll just appeal to you that let's tamper our demands for this year. And when the cake is baked and is bigger, we'll share bigger.
A statement from the National Tripartite Committee (NTC) confirmed that the 10% increase in base pay under the single-spine salary structure takes effect from January 2025. In addition to the salary increase, the national daily minimum wage has also been raised by 10%, bringing it to 19 cedis, 97 pesos, approximately a little over $1. Here is the Minister of Labour, Jobs and Employment, Dr. Rashid Pelpo, making the announcement.
An increase in the national daily minimum wage by 10% over the 2024 national daily minimum wage, which translates into a new national daily minimum wage of 19.97 Ghana cedis.
This new minimum wage will take effect from March 1, 2025. According to the government, the increase in both the minimum wage and base pay forms part of ongoing efforts to ensure fair compensation for workers while balancing economic stability and business sustainability. For WADR, Nadeditite, Accra.
Let's now take a look at the Sahel region, particularly in Niger, where the National Conference focused on the country's refoundation concluded on Thursday. Several proposals were made by the subcommittees, including extending the transitional period by 5 years and dissolving political parties. However, reactions from the population have been mixed since the conclusion of the conference. Some civil society groups consider the proposed transition duration to be excessively long. Here are the reactions.
We believe that 5 years, if we have to count from the president's term of weeks, which we don't know when it will start, and frankly too long for a mandate. There should be laws to make it reasonable and acceptable, during which he can accomplish things, because he cannot do everything. The harm is too deep.
Nigerians have experienced discrimination, injustice and looting for over 50 years. So, even if we give them 20 years, they will not be able to solve everything. Therefore, we will see what they can do with complete objectivity.
Reactions towards the proposed duration of the transition in Niger, following the news that some government officials have had their salaries blocked due to non-compliance with asset declaration requirements. Anasu Miamen, the executive director of the Center for Transparency and Accountability in Liberia, CENTAR, has underscored the crucial need to redirect savings from those blocked salaries towards essential institutions, particularly the Liberia Anti-Corruption Commission. WADR's Monrovia correspondent Ibrahim Parker reports.
Recently, Josiah Joka, the Director General of the Civil Service Agency, announced that the government has blocked the salaries of 215 officials suspended by President Joseph Boakai for failing to declare their assets. Joka emphasized that this action has already saved the Liberian government over 104,000, urging the suspended officials to comply with the mandated assets declaration regime.
Ministry of Internal Affairs, we have up to 198 whose salaries have been lost.
In response to the CSA's decision, Mayor Mina expressed the need for the government to utilize these savings effectively, suggesting that they be directed into institutions like the Liberia Anti-Corruption Commission that are vital for combating corruption. He asserted the importance of the rule of law in nurturing a healthy democracy, emphasizing that public officials must adhere to legal requirements to foster public trust in governance.
These people frequently violated the laws of the Republic of Liberia, especially so the law on asset declaration. They needed to be punished. And that's why, as much as we welcomed the suspension decision, we still believe that some of those people needed to be dismissed.
As the situation develops and calls for accountability intensify, the actions taken by the Civil Service Agency could represent a critical turning point in the future of governance in Liberia. For Newslink on WADR, I'm Abraham Parker reporting from Monrovia.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is The Guest.
We take you back to our first story about the anticipated arrival of Senegalese Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko at the National Parliament today, where he is expected to respond to questions about current affairs issues in the country. This platform serves as an avenue for the Senegalese head of government to address the pressing issues at hand. Our guest, Professor Golgi Jeng, a Senegalese political analyst, speaks about expected concerns that could be raised by the parliamentarians.
Well, I think it would be central to the address of the Prime Minister, and maybe there will be definitely questions from the MPs regarding this very important issue, because people are talking about national money that has not been used the right way, figures that has been manipulated, distorted, with a view to having more debt. I believe that that will be very important for the Prime Minister to answer the questions from the MPs. Maybe those questions could be, are those figures presented by the court reliable, more reliable than the figures presented by the former administration? What I mean is there are differences even between the figures provided by some services from the same ministry. If you have different figures from different services presented in the report, can we really believe that all the figures are true to the reality? The other question we have got to ask is, what is the responsibility of those who are still involved in the management of the country? Because I believe that those figures, it was under the responsibility of the outgoing administration. But the figures themselves, they were prepared and then issued by executives who are still in the Ministry of Finance. So who is to blame?
The Jomai Fads government has promised accountability, ensuring that those responsible for acts of corruption or mismanagement of public funds are held accountable. What do you make of such statement now that the Prime Minister will be meeting the deputies relating to another report that indicts the previous administration?
Well, if there are people who are responsible for any mishandling of those funds, I think that the law must do what they have got to do. That's to say, persecute them. But the problem is, it must be fairly carried out. That's to say, what they call here in Senegal, in Wolof, Samba and Demba, that mustn't exist. See to it that all those who are involved in the mismanagement of the funds be punished.
What do you think will be the outcome of Prime Minister Sonko's meeting with the Parliament today with regards to the latest auditor's report?
Well, what is expected by the people from this report is to have things clearly presented. There mustn't be any doubt about what has happened. But the problem is the same situation or similar situations have happened in the past and has produced no result. if I take the case of former Minister Karim Wadr, who has been accused of embezzlement, about 3 billion CFA francs. But so far, nothing has been, recaptured by the government, by the administration. So this is the trouble with the Senegalese judiciary. You accuse people, you take the measures in order to recover the money, which is supposed to have been embezzled. But in the course of the process, the accused can turn into a victim. I mean, the attitude of the Senegalese population is absolutely bizarre. Based on what I have noticed in the past, I don't believe that this will really result in any recovery of the embezzled or lost money.
Professor Golgi Janes, a Senegalese political analyst. Up next is the Sankule Janko with sports.
Hello there, warm welcome and thank you for joining us. The stage is set for the knockout phase of the 2024-25 CAF Champions League, following the quarter-final and semi-final draws conducted by the Confederation of African Football CAF on Thursday, 20 February 2025. The defending champions Al Ahly SC of Egypt face Sudan's Al Hilal SC in what promises to be a high-stakes encounter. Al Ahly, 12-time winners of the competition, aiming to become the first club to claim the title 3 seasons in a row, according to CAF official website. Pyramids FC, the Egyptian side, will face Moroccan giants ASFA, led by Portuguese coach Alexander Santos. In another mouth-watering clash, South Africa's Mamelodi Sundowns will take on Esperance Sportif de Tunis of Tunisia. Sundowns, winners in 2016, are aiming to break their semi-final barrier, having failed to progress beyond that stage since their title win. The final quarter-final match will see MC Alger of Algeria take on South Africa's Orlando Pirates. Pirates, the 1995 champions, top their group with 14 points and are looking to reach the semi-finals for the first time since finishing as runners-up in 2013. MC Alger under Tunisian coach Khalid Ben Yahia, the competition's meanest defense. Following the quarter-final draw, the semi-final draw was also determined. CAF official website reports the winner of clash between Mamelodi Sundowns and Esperance will face either Al Ahly or Al Hilal. Meanwhile, the victor between MC Alger and Orlando Pirates will meet the winner of the Pyramids versus ASFA tie. All quarter-final matches will be played over the 2 legs, with first leg scheduled for 1 April and the return leg a week later on 8 April. Semi-finals will follow a similar format, with the winners advancing to the prestigious final in June 2025. And that's it for sports. It's back to you.
We've come to the end of this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Mustafa Sek, Mam Kodu Njai, and Sheikh Njai for the technical support. To interact with us via our social media platforms, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram at WADR News, and on Facebook, WADR English Service. I am Augustine Cully. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, New Me FM 94.